You knew them as legends, but their glittering legacies hide shocking secrets, from Joan Crawford's infamous wire hangers and Bette Davis's cruel onset sabotage to Lucille Ball's ruthless business tactics that would make Lucy Ricardo faint. We were told they were goddesses of the silver screen, paragons of elegance and charm whose carefully crafted personas embodied Hollywood's golden age. Today, we expose the elaborate deceptions and reveal the 10 beloved actresses you were systematically tricked into liking. Number 1. Joan Crawford, the gilded cage of a mother. For decades, Joan Crawford was the absolute embodiment of Hollywood stardom, a testament to sheer willpower and glamour. Her rags-to-riches story, rising from an impoverished and difficult childhood to become an Oscar-winning queen of the silver screen, was an inspiration to millions. To the public, she projected an image of untouchable elegance and steely professionalism. More importantly, fan magazines sold the world a portrait of Crawford as the ultimate devoted mother, publishing countless stage photographs of her with her 4 adopted children. What the public was never meant to see was the reality allegedly hidden behind the closed doors of her immaculate mansion. This carefully constructed maternal image was shattered in 1978 with the publication of Mommy Dearest, a bombshell tell-all memoir by her eldest daughter, Christina. The book painted a portrait not of a loving parent, but of what Christina described as a volatile, manipulative, and deeply disturbed tyrant. According to Christina, Crawford was a raging alcoholic who subjected her children to bizarre punishments and harrowing emotional and physical abuse. A version of the truth the studio system had fought to conceal. The most infamous allegation in the book involved Crawford discovering wire hangers in her daughter's closet. Christina alleged this sent her mother into a terrifying, uncontrollable rage, claiming Crawford dragged her from bed, beat her with a hanger, and destroyed expensive dresses. While the specific events have been fiercely debated for decades, with other family members and friends defending Joan, this single, horrifying story came to symbolize the chasm between a star's public persona and her alleged private behavior. The phrase, "no wire hangers ever," became chilling cultural shorthand for maternal cruelty. MGM Studios, and later Warner Bros., were masters of illusion, and their greatest creation may have been the Joan Crawford the public knew. Publicists worked around the clock to bury rumors of her volatile temper and severe alcoholism, reframing them as mere perfectionism. They sold an image of maternal bliss while allegedly turning a blind eye to the turmoil within her home. This systematic deception allowed generations to admire a woman who her own daughter accused of terrorizing the very children she had once used as props for her publicity. Number 2. Bette Davis, the queen of professional sabotage. Bette Davis carved out a legacy as Hollywood's ultimate fighter, a fierce talent who refused to be just another pretty face in the studio system. She famously took on studio head Jack Warner in court, demanding better roles and more artistic respect for actresses. Her willingness to play unsympathetic, complex characters and her sharp, no-nonsense attitude made her a feminist icon for decades. We were taught to admire her as a straight-talking broad who fought for her art and wasn't afraid to be difficult in a man's world. However, this empowering narrative often obscures the notoriously sharp edge of her ambition. Davis wasn't just fighting the male-dominated studio hierarchy. Her intense competitiveness frequently spilled over into psychological warfare against actresses she perceived as rivals. She didn't just want to rise to the top. By some accounts, she wanted to make sure the view was never crowded. Her legendary feud with Joan Crawford on the set of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane provides a chilling case study. During a scene where Davis's character attacks Crawford's, she allegedly kicked Crawford so hard in the head that her rival required stitches. Later, knowing Crawford had weights in her pockets for a scene where Davis had to drag her, Davis allegedly dragged her with glee, causing real injury. Davis even had a Coca-Cola machine installed on set, purely to taunt Crawford, whose late husband had been the CEO of Pepsi. The industry brilliantly spun this toxic behavior as a classic Hollywood rivalry, making it seem like a fun, competitive feud rather than sustained, malicious conduct. Her cruelty was repackaged as admirable grit and necessary toughness in a competitive business. This strategic reframing has allowed fans to celebrate Davis's strength for generations, without acknowledging how often she weaponized that strength to systematically undermine, gaslight, and crush other women in her path. Number 3. Judy Garland, America's tragic, tyrannical sweetheart. No star in Hollywood history evokes more sympathy than Judy Garland. The world knows her as the girl with the powerhouse voice and the heartbreaking vulnerability, a prodigious talent who was exploited by the studio system from a young age. She was overworked, underfed, and famously piled with amphetamines and barbiturates to keep her going, setting her on a tragic path of addiction. Her story has been cemented in our culture as the ultimate cautionary tale of a fragile songbird whose wings were broken by Hollywood. While her victimhood was tragically real, that narrative conceals the difficult truth of who she became as a result. In her later career, Garland earned a reputation for being one of the most notoriously unreliable and difficult stars in the business. Her deep-seated insecurities and crippling addictions manifested as extreme unprofessionalism, costing productions millions of dollars. Crew members and co-stars described walking on eggshells, never knowing if she would show up for work, or what state she would be in if she did. Her brief time on the 1967 film Valley of the Dolls serves as a grim example of her professional decline. She was cast in the veteran role of Helen Lawson, but showed up to the set late, intoxicated, and was often unable to remember her lines. She reportedly clashed with her younger co-stars and created a tense, unworkable environment before she was ultimately fired from the production. The studio replaced her with Susan Hayward, leaving a trail of chaos and disappointment in her wake. The powerful narrative of Garland as a victim has almost entirely absolved her of the professional turmoil she created. Her tragic story is so compelling that it has overshadowed the very real experiences of the producers, directors, and colleagues who suffered the consequences of her behavior. By focusing solely on the damage done to her, Hollywood history has effectively erased the damage done by her, preserving her image as a pure, tragic figure at the expense of a more complicated truth. Number 4. Lucille Ball, the ruthless tycoon behind I Love Lucy. To generations of television viewers, Lucille Ball was, and always will be, Lucy Ricardo, America's favorite zany redhead. Her on-screen persona was a masterclass in physical comedy, portraying a lovable, scatterbrained housewife whose ambitions always hilariously outmatched her abilities. She built an empire on the image of being endearingly incompetent, a charmingly chaotic woman who stumbled through life with a wide-eyed smile. This is the Lucy the world was programmed to love. The real Lucille Ball could not have been more different from the character she perfected. Behind the scenes, she was an iron-willed, shrewd, and often merciless businesswoman who, alongside Desi Arnaz, built a television empire. She was a titan of the industry in an era when female executives were virtually unheard of. This steely resolve was also on display when she was investigated by the House Un-American Activities Committee for having registered as a communist in the 1930s, a scandal that could have ended her career, but which she fiercely stared down. After her divorce from Desi Arnaz, she bought out his share of Desilu Productions, becoming the first woman to run a major television studio. Former employees described her not as the bumbling Lucy, but as a formidable and intimidating boss who demanded perfection. Accounts from the time describe her as a leader with sharp tongue who did not suffer fools gladly and was known for exacting standards and a temper that could flare without warning. This was a far cry from the woman who got stuck in a chocolate factory assembly line. Her on-screen persona was such a powerful and beloved creation that it acted as the perfect shield for the toughest nails executive she truly was. The public simply couldn't reconcile the image of the ditzy housewife with the reality of a trailblazing, cutthroat studio head. The lovable Lucy Ricardo was a masterful performance that not only earned her fame and fortune, but also completely eclipsed the far more complex and formidable woman who pulled all the strings. Number 5. Tallulah Bankhead, the rebel with a racist streak. Tallulah Bankhead has been lionized as a trailblazing force of nature, a woman who lived life entirely on her own terms. Celebrated for her deep, gravelly voice, rapier wit, and open bisexuality, she is often framed as a proto-feminist and an early LGBTQ+ icon. Her outrageous behavior and refusal to conform to Hollywood's rigid standards have been romanticized as the hallmarks of a free-spirited rebel. She was the wild child you couldn't help but admire for her audacity. But what this romanticized narrative carefully conceals is the deeply ugly side of Bankhead's so-called rebellion. Her nonconformity did not extend to challenging the racial prejudices of her era. In fact, she embodied them in their vilest form. Multiple, credible accounts from household staff and theater crew members detail a shocking history of mistreatment. She was reportedly known for launching into vicious, racist tirades against her black employees, using language that was considered extreme even by the standards of the time. Her racism wasn't abstract. It was a weapon she reportedly used in her frequent and explosive tantrums. Multiple biographies and first-hand accounts detail how she would unleash streams of demeaning verbal abuse on her staff, often laced with racial slurs that were shocking even for the era. She expected instant obedience, and any perceived delay could trigger a tirade. This consistent pattern of behavior, described by many who worked for her as traumatic, was not the mark of a charming eccentric, but of a cruel and privileged bully. Studio publicists and a complicit press successfully spun Backhead's monstrous behavior as entertaining eccentricity. Her tantrums were just Tallulah being Tallulah. This brilliant act of image management transformed abusive, racist conduct into marketable nonconformity. By erasing the experiences of those who suffered her unchecked privilege and rage, Hollywood created a sanitized icon, allowing us to celebrate the rebel while ignoring the tyrant. Number 6. Hedy Lamarr, the genius with a vicious temper. In recent years, Hedy Lamarr's legacy has been completely rewritten into an inspirational feminist tale. Once known simply as the most beautiful woman in the world, she is now celebrated as a brilliant, overlooked genius. Her co-invention of the frequency-hopping technology that laid the groundwork for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth has transformed her into a symbol of misunderstood female intellect. This dual legacy, as both a glamour icon and a scientific pioneer, has made her a modern hero. This carefully rehabilitated image, however, conveniently omits the troubling reality of Lamarr's later life. As she aged, she became increasingly erratic, reclusive, and volatile, a stark contrast to the elegant figure on screen. Her final decades were marked by a series of bizarre and embarrassing incidents, including multiple arrests for shoplifting in both Los Angeles and Florida. The brilliant mind celebrated today was, by many accounts, plagued by paranoia and a profoundly difficult personality. Former assistants and service workers described working for the aging Lamarr as a terrifying ordeal. They claimed she would fly into unpredictable rages, verbally abuse them for the most minor infractions, and create a hostile environment wherever she went. The shoplifting incidents, for items as trivial as eye drops and laxatives, were not cries for help from a destitute woman, but strange compulsions from a person whose behavior had become increasingly unmoored from reality. The entertainment industry's successful reframing of Lamarr's story is a masterclass in selective history. Modern biographies and documentaries often focus entirely on her cinematic beauty and scientific contributions, while minimizing or completely ignoring her documented pattern of aggressive behavior and arrests. By creating a sanitized narrative of a misunderstood genius, her legacy has been preserved, effectively erasing the messy, complicated truth of the woman she became. Number 7. Shelley Winters, the method actress or a menace. Shelley Winters built a formidable career playing loud, brassy, and often tragic characters, earning 2 Academy Awards for her work. As a proud devotee of the Method School of Acting, she was praised for her deep commitment to her roles and her raw, emotional honesty on screen. The public knew her as a bold, outspoken personality who poured every ounce of herself into her performances. Her dedication was presented as the mark of a true, serious artist in a town full of phonies. However, what was sold to the public as artistic commitment was often experienced by her colleagues as outright psychological abuse. Winters was infamous in the industry for being an onset menace, creating toxic work environments with her volatile temper and antagonistic behavior. Her method frequently involved deliberately tormenting her co-stars to provoke what she considered a more authentic reaction from them on camera. She wasn't just playing a character, she was creating real-life drama at the expense of everyone around her. A notorious example comes from the set of the 1972 disaster classic The Poseidon Adventure. Winters, by her own proud admission, constantly antagonized her co-star Stella Stevens, making snide remarks and goading her relentlessly to hide the on-screen tension between the characters. This went far beyond professional acting, creating a genuinely hostile atmosphere that made filming an ordeal for Stevens and the rest of the crew. It was less of a performance and more a sustained campaign of bullying. Winters' behavior was largely excused by the industry under the convenient guise of artistic dedication. Because her difficult tactics sometimes resulted in an Oscar-worthy performance, directors and producers were often willing to look the other way. This created a dangerous precedent where the emotional well-being of cast and crew was deemed less important than the final product. Her legacy as a great actress is therefore forever intertwined with a reputation for being a great terror. Number 8. Greta Garbo. The cruelty behind I Want to Be Alone. Greta Garbo remains one of Hollywood's most enduring enigmas, a star whose mystique was as legendary as her talent. Her famous declaration, I want to be alone, and her abrupt retirement at the height of her fame have been endlessly romanticized. The world saw her as a profound artistic soul, an ethereal being who was simply too sensitive and thoughtful for the vulgarity of celebrity culture. Her reclusiveness was seen as a principled stand against the artificiality of Hollywood. But this romantic narrative overshadows a more complicated and, according to some, colder reality. While many friends saw a pathological shy woman desperate for privacy, certain biographers and former employees have painted a different picture. They described an employer who was intensely controlling, deeply suspicious of others, and notoriously difficult to please. In these accounts, her famous desire to be let alone manifested as a chilly, dismissive attitude that kept even those in her employ at a significant emotional distance. This emotional distance could reportedly translate into cutting behavior. Some former employees claimed she was known for her blunt, often devastatingly personal critiques, delivered with a cool detachment. While many who knew her excused this as a symptom of her extreme social awkwardness, others experienced it as a demeaning form of psychological pressure. Her words, whether intended to harm or not, allegedly left those in her service feeling insecure and diminished. Garbo's carefully guarded mystique was the perfect public relations strategy, whether intentional or not. By refusing interviews and avoiding the public, she ensured that the only narrative that existed was the one crafted by the studio and her own silence. The stories of her tormented staff remained whispers, unable to penetrate the myth of the reclusive goddess. Her famous desire for solitude effectively became a shield for her alleged private cruelty. Joan Fontaine, the sweet face of a sibling sabotage. Joan Fontaine captivated audiences with her portrayals of vulnerable, sympathetic heroines, most notably in Alfred Hitchcock's classics Rebecca and Suspicion, for which she won an Oscar. Her on-screen persona was one of refined elegance and a fragile, almost bird-like quality that made you want to protect her. She was cast as the gentle, sweet-natured woman often tormented by darker forces, and the public adored her for it. She was the damsel in distress you always rooted for. This carefully constructed image of a perpetual victim concealed a much more combative reality. In her private life, Fontaine was one of half of Hollywood's longest and most bitter feuds. The lifelong rivalry she shared with her own sister, fellow actress Olivia de Havilland. Their animosity went far beyond normal sibling competition, with both sisters reportedly engaging in decades of psychological gamesmanship and public snubs. The gentle damsel on screen was in reality a fierce and active participant in a famously toxic family war. The feud's most public moment came at the 1942 Academy Awards. Having finally beaten her sister for the Best Actress Oscar, Fontaine famously delivered the ultimate public snub. As de Havilland graciously moved to congratulate her, Fontaine turned her head and coldly refused to even acknowledge her, a moment captured by photographers for the world to see. This single act was the culmination of years of what de Havilland's friends described as Fontaine's psychological warfare. For decades, the entertainment press framed this deeply toxic relationship as a juicy but ultimately harmless sibling rivalry or catfight. This trivializing language served to normalize what was, by many accounts, sustained emotional abuse. By presenting it as a mutual and somewhat amusing squabble, the dominant narrative successfully masked the reported reality of Fontaine's obsessive and deliberately harmful behavior toward her own flesh and blood. Number 10. Lana Turner, the glamour queen with mob ties. Lana Turner was the definition of a Hollywood movie star, the original sweater girl whose breathtaking beauty and glamorous image mesmerized audiences for decades. She was discovered at a soda shop and molded by MGM into the ultimate symbol of silver screen sophistication and dramatic romance. Her public image was a whirlwind of high fashion, opulent living, and a string of 7 husbands, all curated to seem like a dramatic but ultimately glamorous lifestyle. But behind the fairy tale facade was a dangerous and violent reality. The glamour of her love life concealed a terrifying dark side, most notably her tempestuous relationship with mob enforcer Johnny Stompanato. He wasn't just a bad boy, he was a violent associate of the infamous gangster Mickey Cohen. The relationship was reportedly filled with brutal arguments, physical abuse, and threats, a world away from the romantic heroes she dated on screen. This deadly romance culminated on a horrifying night in 1958 at Turner's Beverly Hills home. During a violent argument where Stompanato was allegedly beating Turner and threatening her life, her 14-year-old daughter, Cheryl Crane, grabbed a kitchen knife and fatally stabbed him. The ensuing trial was a media circus, and while the court ruled it justifiable homicide to protect her mother, the incident exposed the violent chaos lurking just beneath Turner's polished image. It was a secret life the studios could no longer contain. In the aftermath, Turner's legal team and studio publicists performed a masterful act of damage control. They successfully framed her as the ultimate tragic heroine, a damsel in distress who had fallen for the wrong man, with her brave daughter stepping in to save her. This narrative conveniently downplayed Turner's willing, multi-year association with a known violent figure from the criminal underworld. The sweater girl image was salvaged, but it was forever tainted by a truth far darker than any movie plot. As we've seen, the gap between the shimmering public image and the green private reality of these stars was extraordinary. From Joan Crawford's alleged reign of terror at home to Tallulah Bankett's racist tirades against her staff, these were not just occasional bad days or artistic temperaments. They were established patterns of behavior that directly contradicted the admirable qualities their publicists sold to the world. The very women we were taught to admire for their grace were often defined by its complete absence when the cameras stopped rolling. What is the most disturbing is not just the behavior itself, but the brilliant and systematic machinery that concealed or even repurposed it. The Hollywood publicity machine was a master of alchemy, transforming toxic traits into marketable assets. Bette Davis's professional sabotage was spun as admirable ambition, while Tallulah Bankett's abusive tirades were dismissed as entertaining eccentricity. This wasn't just about hiding the truth. It was an active and cynical reframing of harmful conduct into positive attributes worthy of our admiration. This legacy of deception extends far beyond the Golden Age, having established a blueprint for celebrity image management that continues today. The studio publicist has been replaced by the public relations team, and the staged magazine shoot has become the carefully curated Instagram feed. The tools have evolved, but the fundamental goal of separating the profitable image from the messy human reality remains the same. Modern celebrity culture, with its performance of authenticity, is merely the next chapter in a story that began a century ago. These revelations force us to re-examine the icons we thought we knew and question the very nature of celebrity itself. It makes you wonder how many of our current idols are wearing equally convincing masks. Which of these Hollywood legends shocked you the most? Were there any actresses we missed whose dark secrets deserve to be brought into the light? We'd love to read your thoughts and hear your reactions in the comments section down below. If you found this deep dive into the hidden history of Hollywood's leading ladies fascinating, please give this video a like to help us reach more people. And be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the complicated truths behind the silver screen's most enduring myths. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.